Hello everybody, Brad the Guitologist here. In this video we are going to take a look at this mid-1960s Silvertone model 1448 amp in case. We'll talk about some of the other Silvertone amp in case models that were produced by Danelectro. We'll also talk about some of the other amp in case combinations that were produced by other companies in the 1960s and also well into the 1980s. This particular model, the 1448, took up the lower end of Danelectro's Silvertone models, and it features a single pickup. It also features a series filament amplifier with a very small 6-inch speaker. The next step up, if you wanted a slightly better combination, featured two pickups, an 8-inch speaker, and an amplifier with a 6v6 output for about 5 watts. This particular example of a 1448 is going to need some work. The neck is a little bit warped, and as a consequence the high strings won't play on the high frets, so we're going to address that. We're also going to service the amplifier and just generally talk about some of the little design features and quirks of these Danelectro made guitars of the 1960s. Just getting a little bit of a closer look here. You're seeing the guitar actually in its finished state after everything has been serviced on it. So the guitar is ready to go. I still need to do the work on the amplifier, but we'll take a look at the combination here together. Again, the amplifier is a series filament amp, which has a 50 C5 output, 12 AU6 preamp stage, and a 35 W4 rectifier. You'll see there's no power transformer with a series filament amp, and they are, as a consequence, just a bit more risky. They were still UL approved in the 1960s, and you know, they're okay to operate. You're probably never going to feel any kind of shocks as long as you don't use any other equipment in conjunction with these, like sing through a microphone. What ends up happening is if you stick your lips on a microphone that's attached to a PA that's well grounded, your lips are being grounded through the microphone when you touch your guitar, so you might receive a bit of a shock with one of these. Again, the speaker is 6 inches, and we should be able to get a date from the code. There we go. 1056 is Fisher, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have a 542, that's the 42nd week of 1965 for that speaker. The guitars on these have a few interesting little features and quirks. One of those is an aluminum nut that's screwed into place. That probably made manufacture a bit easier, I would say. And just an odd break angle on these strings over to the peg heads. Now it kind of really gives it a cool look, but as for functionality, you know, it's not the best in the world. It does work. They do tune, and it does stay in tune fairly well, which kind of defies all logic. Usually you want the strings to be a little more straight to the post, but you know, that's one of the design quirks of these. These tuners also were really found on almost nothing else outside of these guitars, and they were made in-house by Danelectro, and I'm not sure what he used here. This is some kind of trim or material. You see this? This is like a hollow kind of trim material, and it's been stuffed on the end with a piece of plastic, and on the other end as well it's kind of stuffed. But Nat Daniel, the owner and inventor of Danelectro, is pretty famous for using just about anything he could get his hands on that he thought he could get cheaply and that would be very functional. And this is one of those examples of something that, you know, again, looks like a piece of just, I don't know what this is. This is like a 1/2 inch pieces of bent steel, and he just basically used maybe 2 of them, because there's a seam. Yeah, there's 2 of them, because there's a seam right down the middle on this side, and there's a seam down the middle on the other side. So it's kind of a piece of trim and he just has two of them stuck together and plugged up on the ends. Just a weird design, but that's Nat Daniel for you. Another cool quirk of these, and we'll talk about it just a little bit later, is the adjustment screw for the neck. We also have pickup height adjustment screws on the back of the guitar instead of on the top of the guitar, which is interesting, and they are highly functional. Those pickups are also mounted in a very interesting way. If I were to take this thing apart and look inside, you would see how this was mounted. It's mounted on like two legs that are springy, and when you tighten those screws, the springy legs kind of draw the pickup inward, and if you loosen the screws, it kind of pushes them outward, which is interesting. We have these weird bridges, which again are a staple of Danelectro, and they have basically just a piece of wood on top of a trapezoidal piece of metal that's mounted to the guitar. Now the piece of wood actually moves around freely, and it's actually bolted from underneath, and you can turn it however you need to get the intonation correct. They also use composite bodies on these with a strange kind of edging. This edging is kind of a rubberized sort of material. Once again, something like you would find almost on the seals of doors or something. It's just, you know, just a strange material to see on a guitar, but again, that's Nat Daniel for you. Also, this pick guard is made of the same composite material as the guitar itself is made from, so they were thinking outside the box on that and combining materials so they didn't have to order more stuff. Here is the rear of the case, and as you can see, there's a grill in the case through which the speaker sounds. The speaker's mounted down here low, but that's the baffle board, that whole piece right there. Kind of interesting. And these are actually made pretty well. They're also made of a composite material, but I can't recall ever really seeing one that was in that bad a shape. There are a lot of these around, and they do tend to stand up pretty well over time. I still wouldn't want to really abuse this case or take it on the road or anything, probably, but and the other quirk is the handles. These are pretty weighty, as you might imagine, with the guitar and the amplifier in them, and there's no clasp right here in the middle. That's one of the kind of flaws that I see. They only used two clasps, so when you pick them up, you can sometimes, especially on the bigger models where the amp has a transformer in it, you can see a big gap kind of starting to emerge in the middle on those. Alright, so that's a basic overview of this model. Let's get it indoors, and we'll go ahead and show you how I serviced the guitar, and also we will service the amplifier and give it a little bit of a test at the end. So what I've done here is set up a little station jig of sorts where I can straighten the neck over time, and what I've actually done is put a little bit of a back bow in this neck using this apparatus. This is a neck sander right here, a radius block. It's one of the long radius blocks you can get from Stuart McDonald, and I'm just kind of using it you know, to balance against, and I have it all rigged up here. Got the fretboard clamped onto there, onto that stool, and onto this stool at this end, and using a set of come-alongs here actually also, and the come-alongs are working nicely so far. Basically just wrap the come-alongs around, tighten them up as far as it'll go without risk of breaking, and then you can take a clamp or something and push the two sides together, and the more you push them together, the more it's going to pull down on this neck and put pressure on it. Same down here. That's why I've got this tied off, because I wrapped it around to pull these two together a little bit more. It puts more pressure on the come-alongs, and the come-alongs are actually taking up most of the pressure here. These are just were just helping me stabilize it when I first put it all together. So we'll see how this goes. You know, I might take it out of this apparatus in the next couple days, and we'll see if it straightened it out. I know I didn't get a shot of it really with the bow in it, which is kind of unfortunate, but usually that doesn't come through in video very well anyway, so you guys aren't missing much. But yeah, let's give it a couple days in this apparatus and we'll check it and see if that fixed it. And if it did, we will string up the guitar, get it all nice and set up and ready to go. Then we will turn our attention to the amplifier, so stay tuned for that. All right, it's been a couple days and I've removed the clamps and we've seen some improvement. It's still not perfect. That side's really good, but there's a little bit of a twist in the board still, and I don't think it's going to come out. But it's a lot better than it was, actually. All right, since the neck is already off this thing, this gives me an opportunity to show you one of Danelectro's little innovations, and that is the neck pitch adjustment screw, which is right here. This is a forerunner to the Fender version that they started putting on their guitars along about the 70s and 80s. But there's a little screw down in here that adjusts, and the screw pops out of here and it adjusts the neck pitch by pressing against a corresponding little dimple that they have right here. And the sad thing about this neck adjustment is that it's almost the same as the one Fender later put on their guitars. And Danelectro, Nat Daniel of Danelectro, never bothered to patent the innovation, as he did with many of his innovations. He just didn't bother applying for patents on the stuff. I guess he figured everybody else would catch up or find another way to do it sooner or later, so he might as well just put it into production and make use of it right away. And just save the money, I suppose. He was a very frugal man, as you can tell. Most of the bodies on these instruments are a composite. The pickups are made from lipstick covers that were, I guess, some kind of a wholesale buy that he did, probably on a whole truckload of these things. And he just basically designed a pickup around the lipstick cases. Those are actually lipstick cases that would house lipstick for women. Just little things like that. I mean, Nat Daniel was an absolute genius, and it's unfortunate that he didn't patent this stuff, because he probably could have made a bundle off of licensing the patents later in life, especially on stuff like this, the neck tilt adjustment. It's just a brilliant little design, very simple, and yet, works wonders whenever you're trying to set up a guitar quickly and easily. So let's go ahead and get the neck back on this thing, and then we'll set it up and see if there's anything else that we need to do to get the strings low enough for this thing to be playable. Like I said, it's not perfect. Still, it does have a little bit of a rise right here toward the end of the fretboard, so we may have to knock a little bit of height off a couple of these frets down here. But that's not going to be a huge deal, and it's actually a lot less than it would have been had we not clamped it up on our homemade jig. All right, the screw on this one is a little bit seized up when I try to move it, so I'm going to give it a little shot of 3-in-1 oil and give it a few minutes to loosen itself up. All right, I've gotten it fairly loose now, and it uses a hex head, so we have an Allen wrench here to tighten it. Okay, here's a problem that I've run into. This mechanism consists of 2 different nuts. There's a nut up here on top that's a separate piece from the nut that's on the bottom. So this piece right here and the screw that's inside of it right now are rotating together for some reason. They're kind of stuck. See, when I move this, that little eyelet on the outside is turning also, which is not what we want. So I think I'm going to have to knock this out of here, this little eyelet with the screw, and get those 2 pieces separated with some oil and then reinsert it. See the eyelet? I don't know if you can see that or not. There we go, right there. See, the screw is attached to the eyelet, and I need to separate those 2 pieces. For some reason it's not want to come apart. These are the strings I've put on this guitar, and they're 9 gauge, and usually I don't put anything quite this light on a short scale guitar because the slinkiness is usually just too much on a short scale. But in this case, I'm using these because I have a lot of them, and I got these on a deal from a distributor, and he had boxes of these, and I think it came out to like, I don't know, $1.50 or $2 per set or something by the time I got them. So it was like just really cheap. These are actually coated. They're called extended performance, and they're coated, but they're coated in a different way than like Elixirs are coated. What is this? Metal surface treatment. But they're like black colored on the wound strings, and they feel really nice, actually. I've been really happy with them. I've put them on several of my guitars now, and I like these actually quite a lot. And they're fine on this guitar too. They play really nice. Another thing you want to be wary of with these guitars, you want to be very careful when polishing these, because the little sparkle finish, all of these little sparkles will rub off. You can see how there are fewer sparkles in this area where you know the hand goes than there are, say, up in here, and especially under the strings you can see more sparkles, less there again. That's because these little sparkles are they're kind of an afterthought in the manufacturing process at the time, and they will just rub right off. So if you want to keep, you know, it real sparkly, like from the factory, you'll want to probably just not play it, because the more you play it, the more it will rub off, and also polishing it will rub those off too. So just keep that in mind. Before we go any further, let's look at the other popular model that sold in the mid-60s by Danelectro under the Silvertone name. That's the model 1449. Here is the amplifier for the 1449, and as you can see, it has a 6x4 rectifier, and it does have a power transformer, 12AX7, which actually is the oscillator for the tremolo, and it has a 12AX7 and a 6V6 for the amplifier, the main amplifier. You also get a tone knob on this one, so the 1449 is a considerably better setup. Also, one of the things I forgot to mention is that the version that we have is a short scale guitar, so it's like a 3/4 21-inch scale, whereas this one is a full scale guitar as well. In addition to having the two pickups, I think it has like 19 frets instead of 17 also. So much better guitar and a much better amplifier with the 1449. Just like all of the other Silvertone labeled Danelectros, and Silvertone labeled everything, they were sold through the Sears catalog. Here's one of the pages from a Sears catalog. You can see their regular guitars up here, and they had guitars made from a lot of different sources. You'll see these up here at the top. These are made by Kay. I'll zoom in here so you can see. These here, I believe, are made by Kay, if I'm not mistaken. These are Harmony guitars. You can always tell Harmonies by the shapes of the necks. They usually also have a white truss rod cover on the necks. These are Harmony guitars as well. But these down here are Danelectro made. And again, here's the one that we have over here, retail for $67.95 originally, and the slightly nicer one, or well, we've already determined it's way nicer, both in the amplifier and the guitar, was $99.95. So for the difference in money, this was a way better deal, really. This one also came with the foot switch, and a little 45 record in some of the years, not all of the years, but sometimes they gave you the little 45 record as well along with it. They made some other ones also for Sears. Let's see. Here's a different year's catalog. And again, different sources here. We have Silvertone, we have Harmony guitars over here. These are also Harmony made with the D-Armand pickups. There's a little Bobcat. That one right there, you can tell from this headstock and this headstock, these are K guitars. So we've got Harmony, we have K. We also, down here, have our Danelectros. And an interesting thing here on this model year, with these different models, the 1451 and the 1452, one of these was made by Danelectro entirely, the body and the guitar. This one, however, the body looks to be Danelectro, It's kind of hard to zoom because the quality's not great, but the neck appears to be a Harmony neck. Now, I haven't had one of these models before, but just by the really low res picture that I'm seeing here, this looks like a Danelectro body with a Harmony neck. So it's very possible that Sears might have been sourcing the bodies. They were shipped to Chicago to Harmony, and Harmony put the necks on these bodies and then distributed. Since Sears was a Chicago-based company, I'm guessing that was the case. Danelectro wasn't the only company to be getting in on this game with the amps and case. Valco also made amp and case guitars and amp combos. You can see here's one example labeled Airline, and Airline is a Montgomery Ward label, which is Sears's big rival back in the 60s. That was their arch rival. Their cases opened from the top, interestingly enough, so you actually slid the guitar down inside of it like that. Here's another example of a Valco. Long about 1968, the guitar market took a serious dive. Some of the long-standing legacy companies such as Valco and Kay were out of business in that year, and sales were way off. Pretty much the demand had been satisfied from, you know, the whole Beatles appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show up until 1968. The market had just been flooded, especially with student instruments. And as a consequence, the amp and case idea sort of went the way of the dodo. But then along about the late 70s and early 80s, Peavey revived the amp and case idea for its student model T-15 for the T-Series. The T-15 is a short 3/4 scale guitar also, but with 2 pickups. Pretty decent little guitars, nice playing guitars. Peavey also pioneered CNC use on especially making necks, which they were able to cut their costs way down. The amplifiers in these were solid state also, which also meant they could print circuit boards, and that was a lot cheaper as well than having somebody assemble amplifiers. It also made them a little bit more reliable, even if they didn't sound quite as nice. But just an interesting thing that, you know, the amps and case fell out of favor for so long, and then only to have Peavey come back and revisit in the 80s. Apparently, the American makers weren't the only ones trying to get in on the amp and case craze. This is a 1960s Tombow made, which is a Japanese manufacturer, amp and case. This is called the ukulele, and I think they were marketing it as sort of a ukulele type instrument because of the really short scale, but it is a 6-string instrument, closer to a guitar. And over in England, much earlier, you had this, which is the Truvoice made by Selmer. I'm not sure exactly what year this is from, but it appears to probably be from the 1940s. And here is another shot of that little setup with the amp being made by Selmer once again, and the guitar being a Rickenbacker. And here's a much better photo of a different example. So, you know, this is not a Johnny-come-lately idea, this idea of amps in case. It's surprising to me that, you know, with all the technological advances of the last 30 plus years, that the Peavey T-15 is the last mass-produced amp in case that was made, at least in my recollection. If somebody knows of another, let me know. But I think the T-15 was the last one, and you know, with the advances in the technology, especially by companies such as Roland Boss, with some of their Katana series and their E-band series in particular, which I have one of those, and they're fantastic little practice amps. If they could put all that technology in something so small and stick it in a case with a small speaker, you know, you can get some amazing sounds. Put a line out on the thing, and you know, for most of the gigs that guitar players go to, particularly for guys who are doing the whole looping thing, and some of the technology to make electric guitars sound acoustic, you know, there's no reason why a guy couldn't pick up one of these little amps in case with some of the newer technology stuffed inside and go play his Friday and Saturday night gigs and just have one hand free, where normally he would have had to carry his speaker system and his pedal board and all that stuff. So, you know, somebody, one of you companies, you know, Boss, Line 6, even, one of you guys need to make something like this, you know, experiment a little bit. Try to stick one of your products in a case again. Okay, we're going to take this amplifier out of this case. A couple ways you could do that. I could remove the 4 screws here, which I'm going to have to do anyway to get this thing out. But the baffle also comes out. You can see a little piece of metal here and here with a screw, and then there's a little strip of metal over here on this side. These are the pieces that hold this baffle inside this case. So we're going to remove the whole baffle so we can take the speaker with us up to the desk, and then we'll remove this. Well, here's a definite design flaw. They have this screw for this little trim piece that's holding the baffle in, tucked in kind of behind the transformer, so it's a little bit hard to get your screw to. It would have been better if it was like right over here. And once again, it's worth noting these little brackets that I pulled off of here, they're like aluminum trim of some sort. It looks like they were probably meant for like around door frames or around or used in maybe trailers or prefabbed houses of some kind. I don't know. It's hard to place what this is. This is definitely some kind of trim though. Something that would have been used in another process, not intended obviously for guitars or guitar cases or anything of the kind. But this is the type of thing that Nat Daniel would do, man. He would get stuff that was not for the intended purpose, but repurpose it, and probably got this stuff ultra cheap and was able to build this stuff cheap enough so that anyone could afford it. But with these pieces out, this should just lift right up and out of here, I think, unless there's just another screw I'm missing. There might be another screw under there. We'll have to see. Yeah, so it looks like, feels like maybe there's another screw possibly under there holding it. So let's get these screws out and see what's going on. Sure enough, there's another screw right there. Okay, I just had this thing open out on the bench and inspected it, dialed up on the variac and everything. And all the voltages were fine. Everything was rock solid. The old capacitor, which is right here, this Planet capacitor, this thing is still in really good shape. I don't see any issues with them. Capacitors are fine. I did clean the input jack, clean the pot and the sockets, which were a little bit dirty. But other than that, it really didn't need anything else. This gives us another opportunity to see the design of this. It's just basically a piece of masonite with some holes punched in it. We have one little bent piece of metal right here. That's about the only metal in here, with the exception of this shielding right here, which is just shielding tape that's taped onto the masonite to shield the input area. Other than that, it's very, very simple. Your little isolation transformer is, which isolates the input, is just screwed right into the masonite, as is everything else. So very, very spare, very Spartan and very simple. But that's Danelectro for you. A couple of other codes that I did see while we're in here. That's a 1965 40th week. Also, these tubes are dated 1966. 13th week, so this would have been right in probably the first quarter or so of 1966 is when this was sold, I would imagine.
Dad, do you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
I will take a peanut butter sandwich, and you can hold the jelly.
So no jelly?
No jelly, please.
Okay.
I'll have a peanut butter sandwich, though. Thank you.
Okay, click.
Thank you.